Booker T. Washington was one of the most influential black educators of the late 19th and early 20th century. He rose from slavery to a place of power and impact. He traveled hundreds of miles after escaping slavery in order to educate himself at the Hampton Institute. In 1881, he founded the Tuskegee Industrial Institute. After the Civil War, Washington was committed to improving the lives of blacks. He took the challenge of building the economic progress of African Americans from 1895 to 1915. He advocated economic independence through self-help, hard work, and a practical education. Washington advocated an educational system that was inclusive for both whites and blacks. In order to prevent resistance, it is said that Washington made efforts to reassure whites that nothing in his education program challenged white supremacy or offered economic competition. If he hadn't assured, Washington probably would not have been able to help the blacks as much, likely due to the whites being threatened by the economic, educational, and cultural ascendance of blacks. After the Civil War, 3 amendments to the Constitution were ratified that changed the lives of blacks forever. The 13th Amendment ended slavery in the United States, which soon meant all blacks were to be free. Congress then passed the 14th Amendment in 1868. This amendment was sometimes called the Great Amendment, inasmuch as it helped to protect the rights of freed slaves. Amendment 14 stated that all people who were born in the United States, including African Americans, are considered natural citizens and have the same rights as all other Americans. Next, there was the 15th Amendment, which helped protect black voting rights. African Americans used this amendment to gain political power and to defend their rights, although some states still tried to oppress the black civil rights when they passed poll taxes and literary tests prior to voting. These oppressive laws were invariably found to be unconstitutional under the new amendments. African Americans were constantly the targets of discrimination in the years following the Civil War. The government did little to help them work their way up the social ladder, but reformers such as Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois set their life mission to help blacks gain true equality and respect. These men were the 2 most prominent black leaders of their time, although they advocated different approaches to solving the economic and social issues of blacks during the post-war period. On September 18, 1895, Booker T. Washington stood before a predominantly white audience at the Cotton States and International Exposition in Atlanta and gave a speech that would later be known as the Atlanta Compromise. While portraying his views on the road to equality, he said, "In all things that are purely social, we can be as separate as the finger, yet one as the hand in all things essential to mutual progress." Washington reasoned that the whites would come to view them as equals once the blacks had proven themselves economically. As long as the facilities were comparable, instead of looking at the negative, they should focus their efforts on ways in which to gain equality through merit. He said that by proving they were useful for the economy and that they could help America to grow and prosper, blacks would gradually earn the rights they were seeking. While Booker T. Washington and other reformers were weaving their way through the white oppression, they faced many obstacles. For example, the 15th Amendment was meant to allow blacks to vote, but when they introduced literary tests and poll taxes prior to voting, it was as if they weren't allowed to vote anymore. A lot of blacks barely had enough money to buy food, let alone vote. The literary tests that they gave were hard enough that whites would not have been able to pass. But, of course, blacks were the only ones that these laws applied to. Also, Southern legislators made a set of laws called the Black Codes that undermined the rights of blacks and kept them under the authority of whites. Though these laws and codes continuously pushed the blacks farther down the social ladder, the harsh, daily racism was the worst punishment of them all. Whites constantly looked down upon and harassed the blacks to no end. Booker T. Washington knew how wrong it was and made it his goal to obliterate such cruelty. The blacks and the reformers both knew that it would be a long road to reaching equality between the races. After the Civil War, the blacks hadn't received anywhere near the freedom they had expected to. Even the Supreme Court upheld practices of segregation. Washington's suggestion of earning respect through working rather than arguing the law was a reasonable view. The years during Reconstruction after the war were a tough time for blacks, but the reformers had at least gotten the ball rolling. Americans didn't like change, and that was the reason Booker T. Washington stood out from the crowd. He pushed for black education, black veneration, and disregard for the whites in order to get what they deserved. This, he said, would win the respect of whites and lead to African Americans being fully accepted as citizens and integrated into all strata of society. Many people, when asked to name a song that encapsulates the civil rights movement, will pick We Shall Overcome. It was indeed the movement's theme song, sung by countless people all over the world. That's how we often think of the song. Large groups of people gathered together, singing it as they struggle against mighty odds.